A long time ago, specifically on the islands of Ayaka, a massive volcanic eruption caused huge fires and forced the inhabitants to flee. Among the inhabitants are two children, Yukito and Jingi, who rush to reach the ship that will take the survivors away from the islands. When they arrive, the supervisor asks them to board the ship immediately, but Jingi tells him that his brothers are still there. He tells him that Makoto has gone to get them. Meanwhile, Makoto, Yukito's father, is standing in front of the volcano, smoking and talking confidently to the fiery monster that inhabits the volcano. He then decides to embark on his final mission and destroy. On the other side, Yukito and Jingi were forced to board the ship and leave before the flames reached them. They watched what was happening from a distance. Years later, Yukito was living in an orphanage. On the day before his graduation from middle school, he received a letter from someone named Sanji, who told him that he had been a friend of his father's and had been forced to place him in a children's home for certain reasons when he was 5 years old. However, the time had come for him to return to his hometown of Ayaka after deciding to become his guardian and promised to ensure he would live a peaceful life and attend high school upon his return. Yukito paid no attention to the matter and quickly fell asleep after reading the letter. Then, he had a strange dream in which he was drowning in the depths of the sea. Although he was alone at the bottom, he felt comfortable because he was an introvert. Suddenly, someone's hand appeared and pulled him up, causing him to wake up in the middle of the night. His eyes resembled those of a dragon. The next day, Yukito got ready to leave after the graduation ceremony. When his teacher wanted to say goodbye to him, he told her that he was going back to his hometown after one of his father's friends decided to become his guardian. The teacher was surprised that this person had left him alone for years and then suddenly decided to send him back to where he belonged. Yukito told her indifferently that it wouldn't make any difference in his life, so he didn't mind going back. He left quietly, then remembered how his life had been while he was at the orphanage, and suddenly noticed that everyone's eyes were drawn to someone. When he looked at what was happening near him, he saw Jingi sitting like a stray cat, deliberately provoking strangers, with a huge amount of alcohol next to him. He couldn't recognize him because of his appearance, which suggested that he was an unplayable character wearing low-budget clothes. Yukito felt that he was just a weirdo and decided to move on, but then he found him approaching him and telling him that he hadn't seen him in a long time. Yukito felt disgusted when he smelled his foul breath, which smelled like rotten garlic, and then told him that he might be talking to the wrong person, but he was surprised when he found that he knew his name well. Despite this, he denied who he was in an attempt to get rid of him. When he continued on his way, Jinji followed him, certain that he was Yukito. When he continued to deny who he was, he decided to use force and threw him into the river without warning. Yukito felt his clothes suddenly become heavy under the water and that he was about to drown until his powers awakened. He caused a thunderous hurricane and tried to calm himself so as not to cause a disaster, while Jingi used his powers to stop him from doing what he was about to do. Yukito was surprised that he was able to stop his power, but he ended up being put in a white bag without knowing where he was being taken. After a while, he regained consciousness to find himself on a boat in the middle of the sea. When he saw Jingi with him, he felt angry at the way he was being treated. The captain tells him that he is famous in the Aya Islands for his madness and unjustifiable behavior. Yukito then realizes that he is one of the residents of Aya, and Jingi tells him that this will be his new home from now on and that he came on the orders of Mr. Sanji to take him away. He then introduced himself and asked him to consider him as his older brother, as his father had been like a father to him, being his teacher. While Yukito was trying to comprehend what was happening around him, he was surprised to see a train running over the sea. Jingi told him that this was the sea route connecting the islands of Ayaka. After they arrived at one of the islands, Yukito felt strange about the atmosphere there, so Jingi tried to remind him of his past on the island, but he told him that he didn't remember much about his childhood. Then he found Mr. Sanji and Mrs. Momoko welcoming him warmly. Momoko introduced herself and told him that she was the owner of the house where he had lived as a child. Sanji then told him that he was the current mayor of Ayakashima and would be his guardian from now on. They took him to his new home, and Yukito was amazed when he looked around and saw lakes and green spaces everywhere. Momoko told him that the place was beautiful despite being remote and suggested that he go to the first island to have some fun, as it was busier and had many facilities. After arriving at his house, Jingi asked him if he was starting to remember anything. Then Yukito's eyes fell on a souvenir photo of him with his father and everyone else, but he still couldn't remember anything because his mind was blank. Momoko told him that his father was a pulse guardian who was responsible for maintaining balance and harmony between the islands. Jingi told him that this term was used to describe people with strange powers like them. Yukito remembered that he had put it in his bag somehow, and Momoko became angry and almost kicked him in the butt. Then Sanji told him that Jingi was his father's third disciple and that the other two disciples were more skilled than him. When Yukito asked what happened to him when he threw him into the river, Jingi told him that it was just brute force that he hadn't mastered yet, while the rest guessed that he was born with extraordinary talents, being Makoto's son. Yukito was surprised that his father had something to do with it. When he asked about his mother, he found that they had no idea about her, as Makoto had not told them anything about her. He wondered why they wanted him to return to Ayaka again, and Sanji told him that they were only carrying out his father's will, who had told them to send him to the care center after his death, return to the islands after graduating from middle school without giving any reasons. Yukito realized that he had to find out more during his stay here, and when Sanji asked him if he minded living with them, he told him that it wouldn't make any difference to his life anyway, and thanked them for taking him in. In the evening, Yukito went to his room and was surprised when he opened the window and saw a small slime-like creature sneaking out. Jingi told him that it was called Mitama, a peaceful creature that roamed the island constantly, and that he would get used to its presence over time. Yukito was surprised that he had entered his room without permission, while Jinji wondered why he had put a strange barrier between them and scolded him for what he had said to Sanji and Momoko a little while ago, as if he was deliberately distancing himself from people. Yukito realized that he had been too harsh. He then tells him that he doesn't want to get close to others because he almost caused the death of one of his colleagues at the care center when he provoked and harassed him while they were on a picnic near the river. When his colleague angered him, he couldn't control himself, causing the river to rage and attack the child, who almost drowned. Since then, Yukito decided to keep his distance from others so as not to hurt them and to maintain his emotional stability. He found that this was the only way he could continue living. While he was telling his story, he noticed that Jinji was not paying attention to him and had started playing a game on his phone. Yukito felt angry and left the room, slamming the door behind him. He decided to go outside and walk around alone. As he was walking, trying to calm himself down, he noticed one of the Metama fall into a nearby lake. Suddenly, a black spot formed under the water, causing a huge explosion that almost hit him, but Jingi intervened just in time and used his power to counter it. He then carried Yukito away and expressed his admiration that he had managed to encounter Ara Metama on his way, a dangerous creature. Unlike the one that had appeared in his room, he guessed that it had been attracted by the gloomy aura emanating from Yukito and decided to show off his power in front of him and use his power to destroy him. After Jingi thought it was all over, he found the monster sneaking up behind him, growing again as if nothing had happened. Jingi threw him inside without warning, which made Yukito furious at how he was treated. He couldn't hold back his power any longer and caused the monster to explode, tearing his body to pieces. Jingi used his power to counter the attack and turn the sea into rain falling on them. He then went to Yukito and expressed his admiration for his abilities, telling him that he knew he was aware of his power, but that the problem lay in his inability to control them, and that he had to make an effort to learn how to control them. He then added that he would accompany him in his training and asked him to call him his teacher. After Aura was purified, Mitama returned as Jingi had told him to stop complaining and talking about his introversion, and that all he had to do was express what was inside him from time to time. At that moment, Yukito felt like he was that child he considered his older brother, not yet realizing that they were the same person due to his broken mind. When he started to return home, Yukito decided to follow his advice and didn't hesitate to deliver a powerful kick that sent him into the river, just as he had done to him before. A few days later, Jingi woke up and found Yukito training alone outside to control his powers. He encouraged him to try harder and feel the pulse energy inside him, but Yukito had no idea what he was talking about. So Jingi told him that pulse energy was a vital energy that flowed like huge waves beneath the islands of Ayaka, and that those with powers like them can harness this power too. Keep things under control. He added that Yukito's power was flowing completely unchecked and that he needed to find a powerful source to help stabilize his energy. He then asked Yukito to try casting a spell, but all he could produce was a small bubble of water, which frustrated Jingi. Jingi then used his power to show him how to master a simple spell like that and turned part of the water into a humanoid creature that he could control and keep for a long time. Yukito told him that all he wanted was to learn how to control his power, but Jingi ignored him and ordered him to continue training. After a while, Yukito wanted to take a break, and when he entered the house, he found Jingi waiting for him with a gloomy expression. It turned out that he couldn't find any alcohol inside, which made him angry. He told Yukito that he couldn't buy any from the bar because he owed them a lot of money. He then decided that they should start looking for work to earn money to buy alcohol. Yukito told him that he had no intention of getting involved, but Jinki told him that the master's problems were also the disciples' problems, which meant that he had to work to provide for his alcohol needs, and that his job as a pulse guard would be limited to calming the destructive power of the Mitama. Meanwhile, Yako and Chataru were collecting requests from the islanders and noticed that there were increasing complaints about the noticeable increase in the appearance of Arametama since the last earthquake. Yako decided to take on the task, thinking it would be easy and that their teacher Haruaki was busy lately, but they ended up arguing over who should take it. Then Jingi appeared out of nowhere, took the paper with the task, and decided to take care of it. When they felt resentful towards him, he told them that they should be grateful for his attempt to lighten Haruaki's load, but they knew very well that he was broke, so he resorted to doing errands again to earn some money, as it seemed that he couldn't even afford Senzo's pills from Walmart. He told them that this time he was doing it to help his student Yukito with his training. When he appeared before them, they were surprised to learn that he was the son of Makoto, the Pulse Guardian who had previously trained Haruaki. Jingi tells them that he has returned to the island to train in the art of pulse guarding. After they leave, the two students decide to go and tell Haruaki about it. Yukito wonders about their identities, and Jingi tells him that they are just servants from the Kasen Shrine. Despite their lack of experience, they are used to competing with each other in everything. Yukito was surprised by Jingi's confidence that he would soon become their friend because he was the same age as them. He didn't want that to happen because he didn't want to hurt them, but Jingi told him not to worry because they were skilled in using the power of the Pulse Guardians. Yukito was surprised by the idea that he can make friends. Jingi ignores him and tells him that they are on their way to the Kaisen Shrine to take on the mission of rescuing the Mitama, and that they will go to get permission from Haruaki, the head priest of the shrine. He then tells him that taking care of the Mitama is the primary duty of the Pulse Guardians. Yukito asked if he could do anything about it, and Jingi told him to consider it part of his training and that he would intervene if things got worse. Soon, Aramitama appeared before them while they were talking and told him to take care of it. Yukito was surprised to see that he appeared the same size as the previous Aramitama. While he was talking to Jingi, he saw him leave him and walk away, thinking that he was abandoning him, which made him feel angry. On the other hand, Yako and Chadaru went to tell Haruaki what was happening. Yukito had no choice but to follow Jingi so that he would not die alone. Soon, they ended up falling into the river after Aramitama attacked them both with a single blow. After a while, a fisherman who was trying to catch fish pulled them out with his fishing rod. The fisherman thought that Jingi had gotten drunk and fallen into the river, as was often the case, but they told him that they had been attacked by Aramitama while carrying out their mission. He then thought of a plan to get rid of him, and when he thought of using his trump card, Yukito suspected that he intended to throw it at him as he had done before, and Jingi felt confused that his secret had been revealed. While they were talking, the fisherman spotted some trash in the river. When he picked it up, Yukito noticed that it was Jingi's favorite drink, but Jingi didn't notice because he was thinking of a way to defeat Aramitama. After that, they returned to where he was standing and continued to watch him. When they found him not moving, Jingi decided to start his plan and told Yukito to play the role of bait. He was surprised that he wanted to use his student as bait for monsters. While they were arguing about it, Aramitama appeared in front of them. When it began to attack them, Jingi ran away, leaving Yukito behind. However, Yukito saw that Aramitama was focusing its attention on Jingi and decided to take advantage of the opportunity to use the spell he had learned from Jingi. He finally succeeded in launching a powerful attack that caused the monster to fall on top of Jingi. Jingi managed to dodge it with great difficulty, then used his power to finish it off with a single blow. Yeah! After confirming that the monster was dead, Yukito was curious to know what he had been doing before he got drunk yesterday. Jingi remembered that he had been hanging out with his friends all night and had used his powers to show them his mastery of water. Yukito remembered that he could control the creature he had summoned for a long time, and when he glanced at Aramitama, he felt that it might be the control charm he had summoned and abandoned. Then they were surprised by the appearance of the spell in front of them. Jingi remembered that he had been walking with him on his way home and had been drinking until he fell asleep without canceling it. When Aramitama attacked him again, Yukito realized that this was the reason he was being targeted. Jingi tried to control him with his spell, but to no avail. He had no choice but to flee until he fell to the ground. He tried to beg him and apologize for leaving him without breaking the spell, while Yukito thought of a way to save him. Then, Haruaki appeared out of nowhere and used his power to completely destroy the spell with wind magic. After the situation calmed down, Haruaki approached Jingi and advised him not to drink too much alcohol so as not to cause more trouble, but Jingi was arrogant and told him that he would drink as much as he wanted and live his life as he pleased because he did not know when his time would come. When Yukito wanted to thank him for saving them, he was surprised to see him approach him and carry him like a small child. He told him that he hadn't seen him in a long time, and when he found out that he didn't remember him, he introduced himself and told him that he was Jingi's older colleague and his father's oldest disciple. After that, Yukito went home with Haruaki, who told Momoko what had happened and that Jingi was the one who had caused trouble for everyone that day. He also told her that the Pulse Guard spells work in the same way as Metama, and if they are not cast properly, they create a space for Metama to merge with them. On the other hand, Jingi was forced to clean up the river from the debris he had thrown into it the night before as punishment for his actions. Haruaki told them that although Jingi possessed their teacher's special powers, he had chosen all of his bad qualities. Momoko decided to start preparing dinner, as Jingi would not be home anytime soon at this rate. Yukito was surprised to find her preparing a special curry, and she told him that it was cooked in the style of the people of the Aya Islands. While Yukito was enjoying his meal, he noticed Haruaki staring at him before he caught himself and told him that he hadn't changed since he was a child, as he loved curry so much that he would jump for joy as soon as he smelled it. Yukito realized that he had known him well for a long time, as he was one of his father's students. When he expressed his admiration for the spell he cast on Aramitama, Haruaki told him that he was in charge of calming the Mitama in this area. as the Mitama were not allies of humans, nor were they their enemies, but they suffered when they absorbed the negative energy in the surrounding them, causing them to turn into Mitama and cause trouble. This is where the Pulse Guardians come in to return them to their normal state. He asked Yukito not to be afraid of them, as he could live with them as neighbors as long as the situation remained stable. The next day, Yukito was enjoying his time on the sea train on his way to the first island. He couldn't believe that such a thing existed, while Jingi thought he was acting childish and told him that his reaction was similar to when he rode a train for the first time as a child. He then told him that he would soon get bored of the train, as it was the only means of transportation between the islands. When they approached the first island, Yukito found it full of buildings and asked about them. Jingi told him that it was a civilized island compared to theirs, as it had a nightclub and game rooms. Yukito asked about how the train worked, and Jingi told him that it ran on fuel and that they used pulses to build the railroad, but that it stopped working when the sea was rough and rusted quickly, forcing them to use boats as an alternative means of transportation. After that, Sanji welcomed them to the house where they would be staying and told Yukito to get used to island life at his own pace, as he knew how difficult it was for someone who grew up in the city to adapt to the situation. Jingi confidently told him that he would take care of him, but Sanji was concerned about this idea. He then asked Yukito if this was his first visit to the island since his arrival. When Yukito expressed his admiration for the sea train ride, he told him that the island was a popular tourist destination these days. He then suggested that Jingi take him on a tour of the island, but Jingi felt annoyed and told him that he had his own business on the island. Sanji scoffed, knowing full well that he preferred to go to casinos and various arcades as usual, and told him not to leave the tourist area no matter what. When Yukito started to follow him, he told him to relax and enjoy his time so that he would feel better psychologically. After they started their tour around the island, he found it to be very lively and full of activities and shops. Then he was surprised by Jingi's disappearance while they were walking together, and soon found him arguing with one of the vendors because he refused to sell food that someone else had reserved, and it was the last piece he had. When Yukito intervened, the vendor suggested that they try the fresh meat skewers and offered them a free skewer. Jingi refuses the offer and insists on getting the food that was reserved in advance, but Yukito intervenes and agrees to the skewers, forcing him to leave before he causes more trouble. Although they have eaten enough, Jingi is still upset that he didn't get what he wanted. Yukito was surprised that he was upset even though he didn't pay for the food, so he called him an idiot and told him that this place sells the best grilled chicken thighs, which taste great with alcohol. When Yukito asked him how he knew about the restaurant, he told him that a friend told him about it. Yukito was surprised that he had friends on the first island, even though he lived on the second island. Jingi told him that he had friends everywhere. While they were talking, they noticed a clown performing acrobatic tricks nearby. While Yukito was watching the show, he was surprised to see Jingi disappear again, but this time without a trace. He looked around, hoping to spot him, but suddenly the clown fell from the ball that was floating in the air and turned into an Mitama, which began attacking everyone. Yukito rushed towards the clown and managed to save him just in time. He felt trapped because Jingi had disappeared when he needed his help. He decided to take care of Mitama alone this time, as he was smaller than the ones he had faced before. Before he could use his power, Mitama attacked him, and then a mysterious red-haired man intervened and started shooting at Mitama until he was completely defeated. Yukito was surprised to see that the man was carrying a gun, just like John Wick. The man approached him and asked if he was Yukito. When he realized that he knew him, he told him that it had been 10 years since they last met. Yukito realized that this was Akka, whom Momoko had told him about, and told him that he didn't remember much about his past. aka told him that he couldn't believe he had grown up so much, and that he didn't resemble his teacher in appearance or personality. Yukito realized that he was his father's third student, and when he thanked him for saving him, he told him that he was only doing his duty. He was surprised that he also worked as a pulse guard, even though he had shot Mitama. But aka told him that he had the authority to do so because he used special bullets containing spells. Then he invited him into his workplace, and Yukito was surprised to see that he worked inside a tall building. He began to look around, and aka told him that he didn't have much and asked him to consider the place his home. Yukito apologized for intruding, as he had just parted ways with someone he knew. Before he could finish his sentence, he was surprised to see Jingi standing behind the counter, looking like a waiter. He felt angry and asked him what he was doing there. Jingi told him that he had come to complain and talk to Taihei, but found that he was busy with his own work, so he ended up staying there for a while to eat. Yukito felt that he hadn't made much effort to look for him and told him that he had gotten into trouble because of him. aka gave him a drink to calm him down, and when Jingi asked how they had met, Yukito told him what had happened. He was surprised that Mitama had appeared in a tourist area, while Yukito wanted to know more about Akka's technique for defeating monsters, as he seemed unable to sense Mitama's presence after shooting him. aka told him that he didn't purify him, but got rid rid of him completely, which was the opposite of what his teacher and the others did. He seemed to have a grudge against them for some reason. When asked why he killed Mitama, he told him that they caused the deaths of many people and must be eliminated to ensure the safety of the tourists staying on the island. Yukito told him that Jingi and Haruwaki could ensure everyone's safety without having to kill them. aka scoffed at the idea of purifying Mitama to maintain the harmony of the poles without regard for human life, and accused Haruwaki of caring about nothing but following the teachings of his late master. He added that he never cared about cleansing the Mitama in the first place because it would never change the fact that they were causing harm to the people around them. When Yukito objected to his approach, he told him that he was not obliged to follow it, but that he saw it as the best way to fulfill his duty as a guardian. After that, Ibara entered the bar and surprised Yukito when she saw him. Ibara had come to tell her leader, Akae, that she had found the target with Taihei and that it was the main body, not Mitama this time. When Yukito asked what that meant, Ake told him that the main body was in essence similar to an eyeball found in the body of Mitama, but it did not have a pupil or iris, which meant that it belonged to a larger Mitama, which was the main body they were looking for. Jingi wanted to accompany him, but he refused and told him to take Yukito and return home after finishing cooking. He then left with Ibara, and on their way home, Jingi told him that Eika had opened his own security and protection company, which was responsible for eliminating the Mitama. Yukito wanted to know his opinion about Aka's approach, so he told him that he and his friends were doing a great job trying to protect the lives of thousands of tourists who visit the island every day from different countries. He then tells him that the Mitama and Mitama cannot be measured by the same standards as humans, which makes sympathy for them worthless. Yukito wonders how Haruwaki feels about Aka's methods, and Jingi tells him that he does not respect his way and warns him not to mention anything about Haruwaki in front of Aka and vice versa. Yukito was surprised that they were not on such good terms, even though they were both his father's students. Jingi recalled that he had not received any money from Aka and had been forced to return, so Yukito ended up going home alone. While he was thinking about what he had learned during the day, he was surprised by a violent tremor that shook the ground and caused chaos among everyone. He rushed toward the noise to take care of Mitama before anyone got hurt, then noticed that members of the Aka company were evacuating the streets. When he reached the scene, Mitama tried to attack him from behind, but he managed to dodge it. When he saw his eyes clearly, he realized that this was the main body that Ake was looking for. When he remembered what Ake had told him about the truth of Mitama, he felt that he was right. But at the same time, he did not want to destroy them completely. He then proceeded to use his power to counter him, but was surprised to find that his magic had no effect on him. They then began to follow Aka in firing a barrage of bullets at the monster. Jingi joined Yukito and rebuked him for coming here alone. They continued to follow Aka in shooting at Mitama, and Yukito was impressed by their power, but Jingi told him that it wasn't enough to defeat him. Then Aka and Ibara appeared and ordered them to stop shooting, aka prepared to use his black magic, and asked Yukito to watch and learn. He then approached Mitama and cast a black magic spell on himself. Yukito was surprised to find his arm turning into a monstrous form, and Mitama began to attack him, but Ake easily stopped him. Yukito wondered if this was some kind of pulse harnessing, and Jingi told him that it was black magic that allowed him to absorb Mitama's power and use it to his advantage, and that it was considered a forbidden technique. Ake did not hesitate to crush the beast with a single blow and steal its essence, leaving Yukito stunned. He then squeezed the beast's eye and ate it, declaring that he would become stronger than everyone else, even stronger than his master. 3 days later, Yukito traveled with Jingi to the third island. When they arrived, he found that it was even less developed than the second island and more like a rural village. Jingi took a nap on the waiting couch because he felt exhausted from spending 2 consecutive nights drinking. When Yukito woke him up, he told him that he had made a big mistake by drinking for 2 nights in a row, but he was happy because he had won at the arcade and wanted to celebrate. Yukito asked him about the bottle he was carrying, and he told him that Momoko had asked him to take it with him when she found out he was going to visit Haruwaki. He added that the island only had forests and shrines, so he often came here on special occasions, as Haruwaki was the only one who used the shrines with his students. He was surprised when Yukito knew their names and told him that he had asked Momoko since they were going to be friends. Jingi realized that he wanted to have friends despite pretending to be introverted and wished him well in achieving his goal. Then they saw Yako and Chataru waving at them from afar and told them that they had come to show them the way to the shrine where Haruwaki was staying. On the way, they wanted to know if Yukito had gotten used to life in Ayaka, so he told them that he was still confused about some things, such as the sea train and the Mitama, but what he liked most was how kind people were and how they smiled at him whenever he spoke to them. They then arrived at the Kasen shrine, and Yako told him that this shrine was dedicated to the divine water dragon and fire dragon who had lived on the 4th island next to their island. Many accidents had occurred whenever one of them became agitated, so this shrine was built to control their powers. Then Chataru remembered the accident that happened when they were young, when the volcano inhabited by the fire dragon on the 4th island erupted and caused damage that reached the first island, but the water dragon calmed it down, causing a crater lake to form above the volcano. Yukito realized what Aka meant when he vowed to become stronger than the dragon and tried to remember if he had met a dragon before, but his thoughts were interrupted by Jingi sneezing on his way inside. He followed them and found that Chataru and Yako wanted to talk to him about something. However, Jingi interrupted them and told them that he wanted to take a break and drink something to cure his hangover. They were surprised that he intended to drink the sake that he was supposed to bring as a gift for Haruaki, but he ignored them and decided to take them with him to the peach tree area. However, they soon ended up slipping in the mud due to the rain that had fallen the previous day. Haruaki then appeared to greet Yukito, and after a while, Jingi sat down to enjoy the hot springs with Chataru and Yako, while Yukito went with Haruaki to the archives. When Haruaki asked him why he wanted to see him, he told him what Aka had said a few days ago and what had happened when the Arurimata appeared before them, and that their ways of dealing with them were completely different. When he asked him what he knew about pulse energy, he replied with what Jingi had told him. He decided to provide him with some additional information and told him that there was a large current of energy flowing beneath the islands and that he should be able to feel it if he concentrated. When Yukito closed his eyes, he began to feel the current and its path. As he sensed the flow, Haruaki told him that the Pulse Guardians borrowed power from the main flow and used it to cast spells. When he placed his hand on Yukito's shoulder, Yukito returned to reality and told him that he could feel the main flow from deep within the earth. He warned him that going too deep could be dangerous. Then one of the Maitama appeared and told him that these creatures were like bubbles produced by the pulse energy and were usually harmless. Yukito mentioned what Aka had done after getting rid of the Aramitama, and Haruaki told him that consuming the Aramitama meant that one became as tainted as it was until he turned into a new Aramitama. He added that Ake was doing something that Pulse Guardians should not do. Yukito couldn't stop thinking about why Ake had gone so far. After the interview, he found Yako and Chataru waiting to talk to him about something. On the other hand, Jingi finished showering and went to ask Haruaki where the beer was. Haruaki asked him to sit down with him, and when Jingi thought he was going to scold him, Haruaki told him that he wanted to know what had happened between him and Aka. He told him that he was not in a good state, as the effects of taking Arametama were evident on his body. Haruaki wondered if his transformation into an evil spirit would make their teacher happy in his grave, to which Jingi replied that Aka just didn't want to see anyone else die. Haruaki said that people die naturally, and that it is due to pulse energy, and there is nothing he can do to change that. He then scolded him for not teaching Yukito about pulse energy and AKA properly so that he wouldn't have to come see him. Jingi admitted that he was not fit to be anyone's teacher and told him that he was probably waiting for him because, despite his memory loss, there was a part of him that remembered how he had taken care of him when they were young. Meanwhile, Yukito went with Yako and Chataru until they reached a vast square where they told him that they hadn't stopped talking about him since they first met him, which made them decide that it was time to get to know each other better. Yukito was happy that they wanted him to be their friend, but for a moment, sadness crossed his face when he thought that he might lose control of himself and hurt them. However, Chataru suggested that he practice harnessing and controlling his pulse powers with them. They pointed to the target boards in front of them and told him they wanted to test his abilities. Chataru used his power first and successfully grew a bush from a single seed. Yako mocked him and told him his magic was pathetic. He then decided to impress Yukito and used his magic to do the same, but ended up creating a bush of the same height and size as Chataru's, making it a tie. Despite this, they continued to argue in front of Yukito, who calmed them down and asked them to explain the spell they had used. They told him that he had to learn the basics from Haruaki if he wanted to master it, and they gave him some simple instructions that might help him cast the spell correctly. When Chataru gave him a seed to try, Yukito focused all his attention on the seed and succeeded in growing a giant tree on his first try, much to the shock of the two apprentices. Yukito continued to grow the tree, and when they recognized his power and asked him to stop, he told them that he couldn't stop even though he was trying to order the tree to stop growing, but it was growing more and more. Meanwhile, Jingi was watching what was happening and told them that he would take care of it. He then approached Yukito and told him that harmony was everything when it came to pulse energy and that he had to control his power while using it. He began to help him control the tree and stop its growth until he succeeded. After that, he decided to go back and have a drink with Haruaki. After he left, he wanted to check on Chataru and Yako, who were still in shock. They expressed their admiration for his strength and doubted that he had only started training a few days ago. Yukito was surprised that they weren't afraid of him, and they offered to let him train with them under Haruaki's guidance, believing that the three of them would get along well and become a great team. It was the first time Yukito felt that someone accepted him for who he was. He told them that he was confident they would do well together training under Haruaki, but that he still preferred to learn more from Jingi, which made them wonder why he was so determined to become that idiot's disciple. impossible. In the evening, Yukito was trying to master a new spell in front of Jinji. After several attempts, he managed to cast it correctly, and Jinji told him that one usually starts by feeling the flow of energy and drawing it towards oneself, but in his case, the opposite happens. He then decided that they should focus their training on controlling the pulse energy so that it would not flow freely. He raised his hands above his head and sat on the circle of water he had created, which made Yukito feel heavy. As he was trying to maintain his balance, he was surprised by a violent earthquake that shook the place. Yukito automatically broke his spell, causing Jinji to fall on top of him. He apologized for losing control, and Jinji mocked him, saying that he still lacked many skills if a small earthquake like that was enough to scare him. Yukito felt angry and tried to justify that he wasn't afraid. The next day, Yukito felt another earthquake while eating breakfast. Momoko told him that Iyaka was a volcanic island, so earthquakes were a normal occurrence from time to time, and that if things got bad, they would evacuate. While they were talking, Jingi joined them and asked her to give him some money to buy a drink. After she gave him the money, Yukito was surprised that she didn't object, so Jingi told him that he was going to visit his teacher's grave that day. When they arrived at the grave, Yukito noticed many metama around it. Jingi told him that they usually gather around graves, then began to clean the place, put incense, and sat down to drink his drink in front of the gravestone. Yukito wondered why they were visiting his father's grave, since there had been an earthquake a short while ago. Before Jingi could answer, a group of elderly people joined them and found them talking about yesterday's earthquake as if it were a film festival event. One of them guessed that a fire dragon was responsible. When they wanted to pray for Makoto's soul, Jingi told them to wait for him to finish as his disciple. He also decided to share the food they had brought with them and told Yukito to join them and offered him some sake, but he told him he was only 15. The old man realized that 10 years had passed since the volcanic eruption from which they had survived thanks to his father. Yukito wondered what his father had done that day, and Jinji began to explain everything from the beginning. He told him that 15 years ago, the lake on the 4th island had suddenly dried up, and for some reason, the water dragon had disappeared, causing an imbalance between fire and water and giving the fire dragon greater power. He added that all this caused the volcanoes to erupt and become more active after the fire dragon became more powerful due to its longer period of inactivity after the balance of power was disrupted. This is exactly what happened 10 years ago, but his father was the one who dealt with the disaster that day, as he was the one who calmed the dragon and restrained its powers on his own. Since then, the islands have lived in peace thanks to him. Yukito realized how powerful his father was, and everyone told him that they owed a lot to Makoto and described him as a god, to the point that they didn't feel like he was dead. Although Yukito still didn't fully understand, he realized that his father was a wonderful person. Then he was surprised to see Ibara wandering nearby. When Jinki noticed her, he invited her to join them and have some sake, but she ignored him and continued on her way. Jingi remembered that it was the day she visited her family's grave, so he went with Yukito to the grave and told him that it was the anniversary of his parents' death. He sat down to pray for them, while Yukito realized that she seemed upset to see them celebrating on such a day. Then his eyes fell on a keychain that Ibara had dropped as she left, and he decided to return it to her. He asked Jinji to guide him to where she was on the first island. Jinji was happy to have found an excuse to visit the place again. On their way, they ran into Yako and Chataru. When Yukito asked them why they were there, they told him that the earthquake that had occurred that morning had caused a disturbance in the pulse energy, prompting Haruwaki to send them to check the surrounding islands. They were surprised to learn that he had come to return a lost item to Ibara and decided to flee before getting involved in any trouble. They told him that they couldn't accompany him because Haruwaki and Aka weren't on good terms. Meanwhile, Aka was sitting in his bar with Taihei when they felt another earthquake strike. Aka realized that the fire dragon's energy had grown stronger over time and decided it was time to do something about it. Then they found Yukito and Jingi joining them, aka ignored them when he found out that they had come to return a lost item and told them to discuss it with Taihei. He then left immediately and, before leaving the bar, asked Yukito to be careful on his way back. After he left, they sat down and told Taihei what had happened at the cemetery. Yukito wanted to apologize if their celebration had upset Ibara, but Taihei told him that they had done nothing wrong, as it was customary on the islands to bid farewell to the dead with smiles. Yukito was curious to know what had happened to her parents, so he told him that Ara Maitama Nari had burned down their house a few years ago, and that although Aka had managed to take care of him, he had not been able to save everyone. He added that some people cannot accept the idea of death and separation from their loved ones and vent their feelings by destroying Ara Maitama, as is the case with their organization. Taihei then realized his mistake and apologized to Yukito for talking too much about negative things within their group. Yukito decided to leave the keys with him so he could return them to Ibara, but Taihei suggested that he return them himself and call her to come to the bar. After a while, Ibara arrived, and he stood in front of her and returned the keys to her. Taihei encouraged her to thank him for being a shy girl, and Yukito decided to apologize to her for celebrating on such an important day. While they were talking, they were surprised by another earthquake. Jingi realized Ara Mitama had appeared near them. Ibara rushed outside without waiting for them, and Taihei told them that she was acting recklessly when it came to Ara Mitama. Yukito and Jingi decided to follow her to protect her. Meanwhile, Ake went to meet Sanji and told him that Aramitama's appearance in the tourist area that day was not normal and had never happened before, even though the barrier was working well and the fire energy had reached a higher level than usual. Sanji remembered that this was the same thing that happened 10 years ago, forcing Makoto to risk his life to stop the fire dragon. Despite that, the first and second islands suffered severe damage that day, and they might have to evacuate all of the Ayaka islands, including the tourists, if the incident were to happen again. Sanji then orders them to begin preparations for the evacuation so that they can begin at any time. Suddenly, Akae receives a call from Taihei informing him that a fiery Arma has reappeared in the tourist area, so he rushes outside. On the other side, Yukito and Jingi arrived at the scene and found a girl suffocating after her house was engulfed in flames. Jingi used his powers to help her and asked Yukito to head towards Ibara. Meanwhile, Ibara rushed at full speed to take care of Aramitama alone while Yukito searched everywhere for her. When Ibara reached Aramitama, she tried to use her power to attack him, but he countered her attack and continued to attack her with deceptive tactics. Ibara was enraged when she remembered the day her parents died and decided not to run away anymore. She rushed towards him and tried to hurt him, but he grabbed her and threw her away like trash. Before he could launch a fiery attack on her, Yukito intervened and created a protective water barrier in front of her before the attack could reach her, making her see him as Akka, who had saved her that day. Yukito used his power to control water and launched a thunderous attack on Aramitama, inflicting devastating damage on him, which provoked him and made him use his fire power even more. At that moment, Chataru and Yako joined them in search of Ibara. Yukito then blocked another fiery attack and told everyone to run away, but Ibara refused to flee because the monster would follow them wherever they went and cause even more damage to the island's inhabitants. She decided to use her full power to stop him while Yukito fought him. Ibara succeeded in landing a crushing blow to Aramitama, forcing him to stop attacking them. She then continued to kick him in the rear while Yukito tried to cast a water spell to tip the scales in their favor. He finally succeeded in creating a water barrier between them, but it did not last long. After Aramitama continued to get up, Ibara decided to use her trump card. When he launched an all-out attack on them, Chataru and Yako decided to intervene and use what they had learned from their teacher to counter him. They all succeeded in defeating him by combining their powers. Aramitama tried to escape, but Yukito surrounded him from all sides with water magic while the rest took care of defeating him. At that moment, Aramitama's body completely vanished, and Yako and Chataru couldn't believe that they had succeeded in helping calm one of the Aramitama for the first time. Yukito was surprised to see Ibara suffering from exhaustion, so he went to check on her and expressed his admiration for her strength. Before they could relax, they noticed 3 fiery meteors falling, causing widespread destruction to the buildings around them. They were shocked to discover that the meteors were 3 Ararami that had appeared at the same time and in the same place. Yukito used his powers to fight them, but his strength quickly waned and they ended up surrounded. Ibara decided to act as bait so that Yukito could escape with Haruwaki's students, but before they could move, they were surrounded by flames from all sides, forcing Yukito to use his remaining strength to defend his friends. Haruwaki intervened just in time and used his wind magic to purify one of the Adarami, while Akka joined him and killed another Adarami with a single bullet. Yukito realized how powerful his father's disciples were. Only one Aramitama remained, and when Haruwaki tried to purify it, Akka intervened and tried to kill it instead. Yukito remembered what Jingi had told him about them, and when Akka approached the monster's core, Yukito realized that he intended to devour it as he had done before. Before he could touch it, Haruwaki used his power to purify the Aramitama, which made him feel resentful. Haruwaki rebuked him for using black magic and asked him how he would explain this to their teacher. AKA shouted at him that their teacher had died because they were weak. While they were arguing, they found Aramitama continuing to rise again, having grown in size and strength. They both prepared to finish him off, and AKA caused his death after firing 3 bullets at him. He then rushed towards the core to devour it, and when Haruwaki wanted to use his power again, he blocked it with his body. He then decided to use his power against him instead of devouring the core. Haruwaki tried to stop him from losing control of himself, but Akka told him not to get in his way. Despite this, Haruwaki continued to attack him and surrounded him with wind, but Akka easily dispelled it. Haruwaki was forced to attack him from close range and delivered a crushing kick to push him away from the Aramitama core. A fight quickly broke out between them in front of a confused Yukito. Then Jinji appeared out of nowhere and used his power to purify the Aramitama and stop the fight between them. He then told them that they would have been severely reprimanded if their teacher was still alive and reminded them of what he had always told them. They had no choice but to back down and stop fighting. Haruwaki then went to his disciples and apologized to them for losing his temper. Aka decided to leave with his disciples, and before he left, Haruwaki told him that their master would not have allowed him to use black magic. However, Aka decided to ignore the opinion of a dead man, which made Jingi and Yukito feel that there was no hope of ever getting along together again. In the evening, Jingi sat waiting for the train, drinking until he was drunk, while Haruwaki's students were worried about his delay. He told them that he might be celebrating with the mayor for calming Nitama. On the other hand, Yukito expressed his gratitude to Ibara for coming to say goodbye before they left. Then they found Chataru calling them reckless for the way they used their powers to calm the Maitama, while Yako thought they had gained some valuable experience. Then they found Jingi taking credit for saving them, and when they told him he had only shown up at the last minute, he told them they would have wet their pants if he hadn't. Yukito agreed with them and told him that he disappears when needed and then shows up at the last minute to steal the spotlight from everyone else, as if he were the main character. He then turned his attention to Ibara and expressed his admiration for her strength, wishing he had such power and looking forward to working with her in the future. Ibara took out her phone and gave him her QR code so he could contact her whenever he wanted. When he stood there frozen like the Statue of Liberty, Jingi told him to give her his number. Yukito felt nervous because he didn't know how to copy a QR code, as if he was used to living a primitive life like Tarzan. When Chataru commented on the idea of exchanging contact information, Ibara told him to copy her QR code. He was stunned and told her that they would be disrespecting their teacher if they became connected to one of Akia's followers, but she told them that Akia himself wouldn't mind. While they were talking about it, Yukito couldn't help wondering why his father's disciples were fighting each other. He decided to ask Sanji and Momoko about it. When he found the three of them staring at him, he expressed his happiness that they were working together to fight Aramitama and wondered if they could all meet again someday. Yukito was a child waiting for his father to come home for lunch. Makoto returned with his students, Akae and Haruwaki, who had managed to take care of one of the Adorama while Jinji looked after him at home. Momoko bandaged Aka's injured foot and told him not to push himself too hard. Haruwaki criticized Aka's fighting style and told him that he charges like a raging bull without thinking about the consequences. Aka felt resentful and told him that he had to do it to protect him after he left himself open to attack. When they were about to fight each other, Momoko told them that Yukito was watching them. They were forced to stop arguing, and Jingi told him that this was proof of how well they got along. After a few minutes, they continued training, each in their own way. Jingi was amazed by their dedication, even though they had just returned from a deadly battle. Haruwaki told him that he was trying his best to be able to rely on himself in the absence of his teacher. AKA scolded him for not practicing regularly despite his great skill in harnessing water pulses. Jinji justified his laziness by saying that he considered it a secret weapon and that he wasn't required to practice as hard as the others. Then he was kicked from behind by Makoto, who told him to think carefully about how to use his abilities and that he wasn't asking him not to train. Then he found Ake asking him to assign Haruwaki to lead the dragon calming ritual and promising to provide him with the necessary support. Makoto told him that he wasn't ready yet, as calming the fire dragon was much more difficult than they imagined, and told them there was no need to rush, as Haruwaki would be leading the ritual in a few years with the help of Aka and Jinji. Jingi felt bored that he would have to appease the fire dragon every year to prevent the volcano from erupting. Makoto told him that the fire dragon missed the water dragon after its disappearance and expressed its discontent by raging, which made it prone to turning into an Aramitama. Therefore, they must do their best to seal it inside the volcano until the return of the water dragon. He added that the fire dragon's power was increasing at an alarming rate despite being sealed, which made Haruwaki wonder if restraining him was really all they could do. Makoto confidently told them to watch what he would do this year when the time came to calm the dragon. As the days passed, everyone lived happily and peacefully together, doing what they always did, until one day, a powerful storm hit the islands and Makoto decided to go to the mainland to fetch. His disciples told him that they would guard the house until he returned, but after he left, they noticed that the Maitama were acting strangely, and soon they felt a violent tremor that made Aka worry that the earthquake had weakened the seal and that the dragon's eruption could destroy the islands completely. Haruwaki wondered if they would be able to handle the dragon until Makoto returned. Then they saw someone coming to the house and telling them to go to the port immediately, as they had begun evacuating the islands. Jingi wanted to help his friends, even though he knew he was the weakest among them. When they saw the look of disappointment on his face, they told him that they would all do what they could and that he was still a pulse guardian like them despite his young age. Before leaving, they asked him to take care of Momoko and Yukito until they returned. When they arrived at the volcano, they were shocked to see what the dragon had done, even though it had not yet been freed. They quickly used their powers in an attempt to calm it down. AKA and Haruwaki managed to gradually hide the volcanic cracks, But before they could celebrate, they were caught in a loud explosion after the dragon raged inside the volcano and broke free from the seal. They couldn't believe they were standing right in front of it. The dragon tried to launch a fiery attack at them, but the barrier prevented it from reaching them. Haruwaki wanted to take advantage of the opportunity and seal it again. When Haruwaki succeeded in inflicting some damage on it, he was surprised to find that Akka had lost his strength and was unable to resist. The dragon quickly broke through the barrier and launched a deadly attack toward them. With only AKA to protect him, Haruwaki picked him up and tried to escape, but they ended up suffering burns. They found the dragon chasing them and targeting them, and before it could finish them off with a final attack, Makoto arrived just in time and confronted it with force. He then used his power to restrain the dragon and told them that it was too late to stop the volcano from erupting, but that they had to make sure it didn't completely destroy the islands. He then decided to risk his life to increase the island's survival rate to 50% and ordered them to flee from the battlefield. Haruwaki took Akka and flew him to the shore, but he quickly lost consciousness from exhaustion, while Akka was forced to witness the death of his teacher without being able to do anything, which made him feel angry at his helplessness. On the other side, Makoto did not hesitate to carry out his last mission and sacrifice his life to calm the dragon, while Jinji took Yukito and fled to the port with the rest of the residents. At sunrise, the fire subsided and it seemed as if nothing had happened. When Haruwaki and Akka went to the volcano, they found Makoto dead, saying after successfully completing the last mission of his life. After Momoko finished telling the story to Yukito, she told him that his father's death had caused Akka terrible shock, and he ended up leaving the islands after the funeral, after getting into a fight with Haruwaki and deciding not to become a Pulse Guardian anymore. She added that after several years, he returned and had learned some dangerous spells, which caused tension between him and Haruwaki. Yukito realized that his father's death was the cause of the conflict between them. Then, while running away from something that frightened him, he found Jinji reaching out to help him and realized that it was him who had been by his side all along, all the time since he was a child. One evening, Yukito was taking a nap next to Jinji and noticed that the dream he used to have had returned, but this time he was surprised by the appearance of a mysterious entity resembling Aramatama, and he began to feel suffocated in its presence. Yukito woke up feeling short of breath, and Jinji approached him to check on him and told him that he had been making a lot of noise in his sleep. Then he was surprised by the change in the color of his eyes, and at that moment, Yukito received a message on his phone from Chataru asking him if he was planning to attend the festival on Sunday. He asked about the festival and was told that it was held at the Kaisen Shrine. He was happy to attend the event with his new friends and told them he would come no matter what. Then he found Jinji peeking at his messages and asked if it was his first time attending the festival. Yukito couldn't remember if he had ever been to the festival before, so Jinji brought him a mask and told him to wear it as it was a tradition on the island during the festival in the past. A few days later, Yukito attended the festival with Jinji and was surprised to find it crowded with people. Jinji was amazed by his exaggerated fascination with the festival, so Yukito told him that he had always avoided places where people gathered together. Then they met Jinji's friends on their way, and while he was talking to them, Yukito slipped away and continued on his way alone, thinking that he had friends. Then he was surprised to find Jinji following him and wondered why he had left his friends, but Jinji told him that he would spend some time with them later. Then he asked him to give him some of the money he got from Momoko, but Yukito told him that he had never heard of a teacher taking money from his students and wondered why he always needed money because he spent it on trivial things. While they were talking, they were surprised to see Ibara wearing her party dress. He greeted her absent-mindedly, then decided to go look for Chataru and Yako. Jinji asked him what he thought of Ibara's appearance in her yukata and told him to at least try to compliment her. Yukito felt confused and told him he didn't know what to say, so Jinji pushed him towards her and told him to say what he thought. He could only tell her that the yukata suited her very well, but he was surprised to find her wearing a mask and remaining silent. When he was about to blame Jinji, he received a message from her, thanking him. After that, the three of them spent their time wandering around different shops, and Yukito remained impressed by everything he saw around him, but he didn't want to try anything before finding the rest. On their way, they found Chataru and Yako scolding their teacher for giving away so many things to customers for free. He told them that when he found that it made people happy, he couldn't help himself. The three of them ended up joining them to help make and arrange the amulets. Yukito wondered why people wore masks, and Haruwaki told him that in the past, non-human beings such as gods and monsters used to attend the festival, and the purpose of the masks was so that people could forget their identities and enjoy the festival. After they finished the amulets, Haruwaki decided to stay with Jinji in the shop to help him run it and told the others to go and enjoy themselves. Jingai was surprised that he would have to spend his time working and wanted to get out of it by saying he would accompany the others as their bodyguard to ensure their safety. The others ignored him and left the store, leaving him behind. On their way, Yako and Chetaru noticed that Ibara was treating Haruaki with caution, so they told him that he was their leader's enemy and that they should be on guard. They were surprised that she did not treat them the same way, even though they were her students, so they told her that she did not feel threatened by them because they were weak. As they walked, Yukito remembered what he had seen in his dream a few days ago and felt very dizzy. But then he suddenly felt fine and told them that he might have been imagining things. They continued on their way and spent their time eating and trying out different activities. After that, Jinki managed to get away from Haruaki, and when he saw the others enjoying themselves, he felt resentful that he had to work hard alone and decided to take revenge on Yukito for telling on him to his teacher. However, he changed his mind after noticing that Yukito was in a better state after making good friends. After a while, Ibara felt exhausted and had to stop for a moment. The others noticed that her feet were sore from wearing the geta, and Chetaru thought about going to get bandages from the shrine, but she told them she could still walk. Yukito pretended that his feet hurt and he couldn't walk so that Ibara wouldn't feel embarrassed and asked to take a break. Ibara realized what he had done for her, and they were surprised to see Momoko come to the festival. Momoko then treated Ibara's foot and told her not to take it lightly again. Yukito noticed that Sanji and his friends had fallen asleep, so Momoko told him that they usually end up falling asleep after they get drunk. Then, they were surprised to see her drinking a huge amount of sake by herself. She turned to Yukito and told him that his father always enjoyed himself at festivals and that she used to see him smiling all the time, just like he was now. She also told him that he used to cause trouble with Sanji. Yukito was curious to know more about his father and asked her to tell him more about him from time to time. After the festival ended, he was on his way home with the rest of the group when Ibara received a call from Aka, who told her he wanted to talk to Yukito. Yukito felt confused before taking the phone from her. When he started talking to him, aka asked him if Ibara was enjoying her time with them. Yukito smiled and told him that she was having a good time. When Aka ended the call, Taihei teased him and told him that he sounded like a father checking on his daughter at school and told him to forget about it. On the other end of the line, Yukito felt that he was a good man despite his actions and realized that they all had to get along as a family. Suddenly, he felt the symptoms of fatigue returning and quickly lost control of his powers, causing chaos around him. Yukito tried to restrain himself as much as possible, but he could only escape to a place where he could be alone. As he ran, his appearance began to change until he became a terrifying monster. Yukito kept running until he reached the tree he had made before and began to try to control his powers. Yukito was unable to calm himself down and felt that he was in trouble and could cause trouble for everyone around him. He began to remember what he had learned from Jinji, and when he focused all his concentration on his powers, he managed to control them, but he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened to him recently. Then he was surprised to see his father appear out of nowhere and express his admiration for his ability to control himself. He told him that it was time for him to face the truth within himself and wished him good luck before disappearing. Yukito did not recognize his father, who was wearing a mask similar to his own. He then set off to return to his friends and ran into Jingi, who was extremely drunk. While talking to him, he received several messages from his friends and decided to hurry back to them. Before leaving, he expressed his gratitude to Jingi for enabling him to spend time with others thanks to learning to control his powers. Suddenly, everyone witnessed the explosion of the 4th island's volcano and were shocked by the fact that the fire dragon had awakened at such a time. The awakening of the fire dragon caused chaos after everyone felt a violent tremor, and the 4th island was the first to be affected by the volcanic eruption. Sanji decided to immediately evacuate the islands after realizing that this was the same thing that had happened 10 years ago. He then began to address everyone through a loudspeaker, trying to calm the situation and asking them to slowly head to the center of the square. He then decided to return to the office and leave his followers in charge of the evacuation. While everyone was in a state of panic, Jinji felt excited for some reason. Yukito was surprised to see him smiling in such a situation. He asked him how he felt about the islands, but Jinji told him that it wasn't the right time for such a conversation. Jingi insisted on hearing his answer, so he told him that he loved the Aya Islands because it was a good place and his friends lived there. When Yukito asked him about his strange behavior, he was surprised to see him disappear in the blink of an eye after telling him that he loved this place just like him. The next day, it was announced that the 4th island had suffered severe damage from the aftermath of the volcanic eruption, and evacuation operations began. Meanwhile, Haruaki went to the giant tree and saw what had happened yesterday using his abilities and realized that the volcanic eruption was somehow related to Yukito. On the other hand, Yukito was feeling the same symptoms as yesterday after feeling a violent earthquake. He then found Momoko heading towards him and told her that he was fine. She gave him his first aid kit and asked him to head to the boat. When he asked about her, she told him that she would leave after making sure that all the islanders had been evacuated and that she was waiting for Jingi to return. Yukito decides to stay on the island because he is worried about Jingi. When she sees that he is determined to stay, she asks him to help her with the evacuation. Meanwhile, Sanji is at the disaster control office, working hard to monitor the evacuation process on all the islands with the help of his staff. After that, Yukito and Momoko headed to the port and began checking the boats, making sure everyone had arrived and dividing them into groups. She then asked him to take charge of monitoring and making sure everyone boarded the boats. Soon, they were surprised by another earthquake that struck the island. While Sanji was monitoring the evacuation, he found that the problem lay on the first island, where they were having difficulty evacuating the tourists. The island's pulse energy had turned into fire energy, and their only hope was the Aka security company in case Aramatama appeared during the evacuation. On the other side, AK began to feel the effects of taking Aramatama, and when he noticed Ibara's concern for him, he told her that he was fine and that all he needed was to fight one more battle alone, then ordered her to join the rest and prepare for anything that might happen. She tells him that she wants to accompany him, but he refuses. He then remembers the day Makoto died and realizes how his teacher must have felt at that time. He tells Ibara that he must fight this battle alone. On the other side, Haruwaki and his students join Yukito and Momoko and ask her to lend Yukito to them for a while. He then took him somewhere and told him that he would tell him something very important about his birth. He told him the story of the connection between the water dragon and the fire dragon, and how the water dragon disappeared after its power waned, causing the fire dragon's power to spiral out of control. He added that the power of the water dragon had significantly diminished 15 years ago, and at that time, his father Makoto was working to restore the power of the water dragon using a special ritual and gave him a new form so that he could be well cared for. He then temporarily transformed the enormous life force of the new water dragon into a much smaller form so that the dragon could regain its strength and return to its pulsating energy. This meant that Yukito was the miniature version of the water dragon. Yukito couldn't comprehend the truth that he might be a dragon, so Haruaki told him that he believed he was the embodiment of the dragon, which explained his mysterious power and tendency to use water magic. Haruaki then decided to confirm his suspicions and asked him to place his hand against his. When he did, he felt as if he was diving into his depths, to the point that he lost his balance and fell to the ground. Haruaki was certain of his analysis and told him that Makoto had pulled the water dragon from within the pulse energy and created a human incarnation from it, raising him as his son. He added that he was still young, but might be able to regain his true form one day and bring balance back to the islands. He asked him to become strong and continue training as long as he lived so that he could become the real version of himself when he grew up. Yukito then remembered what his father's ghost had told him the day before and found Haruaki intending to go to the fourth island to do what his master had done before. He ordered his disciples to help with the evacuation. His students wanted to accompany him, but he refused and told them before leaving that Jingi would take care of them all. After his departure, Yukito thought about all the strange things he had encountered since coming to the island and wondered if they should really escape, as he felt for the first time in his life that he had finally found the place where he belonged and could express his feelings without restraint. He then expressed his desire to protect this place and its inhabitants, who had given him everything he had been missing, instead of running away. Shadowru told him that they understood how he felt, but that they would be a hindrance to Haruaki, so they should not worry and let their teacher take care of things. Then he noticed that Yako was distracted, and when he told him that he thought Haruaki had decided to do what his teacher had done 10 years ago, they realized that he intended to sacrifice his life to appease the dragon. They thought about stopping him, but Yako told them that there was nothing they could do because Haruaki believed that this was the only way to protect the island. Ibara joined them and told them that she was taking Yukito's side and that she wanted to fight as a Pulse Guardian, even though this went against what Akka wanted, and that she would fight alongside Yukito as a friend, which made the decision final. In the evening, he arrived at the fourth island, and when he began to recite the prayer to the dragon god, he found Akka joining him. He told him that he did not need his help and that he would be able to defeat the dragon alone. He asked him to bring his body back with him after his death because he did not want his students to go through what he had gone through. Ake told him that he would return his body with him as he planned to face the fire dragon alone. Before they could start arguing, the fire dragon appeared before them, and Ake did not hesitate to use his full power and rush towards it. After landing a powerful blow, he was shocked to see that the dragon had not been harmed. Before it could devour him, Haruaki used the power of the wind to push it away at the last moment. He then approached the dragon and began to use his powers to fight it. They ended up joining forces to defeat the dragon and launched a devastating double attack against it. Just when they thought they had defeated it, Haruaki was surprised by a sudden attack from the dragon, which severely injured Akka. They then realized that the dragon was about to transform into Aramaitama. With no other option, he tried to escape with Akka before they were killed. When the dragon approached them and launched a final attack, Yukito intervened just in time and blocked the attack with a water barrier. They were surprised to see that he had come with their students, who had decided to do everything in their power to save their homeland. AK surrendered to reality and asked Ibara to take command of the students to support them from behind, where they would still have a chance to escape if things went wrong. He then returned to the dragon to continue the fight, and Haruaki was forced to follow him. After they left, Ibara distributed the tasks among them and asked Yukito to help her contain the dragon. Then they all headed towards the dragon and began to attack it all at once with a combination of their different abilities. At that moment, he wondered why he still lacked power even though he was actually a water dragon. Meanwhile, Jinji remembered when he was young, and Makoto told him the secret and asked him to keep it until the time was right. Jinji enjoyed discussing Yukito's identity with him in secret without the older students knowing. One day, he asked Makoto if he would be able to see Yukito again after he returned to his original form as a dragon. Makoto told him that when he reached the age of Aka and Haruaki, his situation would stabilize and he would be able to maintain his human form until he regained his true strength. He added that he might have to cast a difficult spell to ensure success and asked him to protect Yukito until then, which made Jingi feel like he was his older brother. After Makoto's death, he was surprised by his will that Yukito be raised outside Ayaka until he turned 15. Despite how harsh this was for Momoko, he told her that they had to honor their master's wishes no matter what, and that he wouldn't have done this without a reason. He then went to Yukito's room to take one last look at him. The next day, he went to say goodbye before leaving, thinking about his master's wish and believing that it had something to do with him being a water dragon. Then he thought about what would happen to him after he grew up and left the island, and he began searching for Makoto's spell to help Yukito transform into a water dragon when the time came. While searching, he found a book containing Makoto's scattered notes, and after a while, he realized that it was Yukito's spell. He was able to decipher it and was surprised when he saw the truth behind the spell. In the present, the battle between the dragon and the rest continues, and Yukito tries with all his might to support his companions. Haruaki realizes that his powers are beginning to be unleashed after becoming aware of their existence, so he decides to use Makoto's spell to restrain the dragon. He then tries to pull it down to force it to submit and curb its power, but the dragon easily breaks free. Ake then decides to sacrifice himself and uses all his power to transform into a demonic form. He rushes towards the fire dragon and fires a thunderous bullet at its head. Despite all the attacks the dragon received from them, it remains steadfast. So Haruaki decided to send the disciples away while he still could and told them that this was the most they could do. AKA remembered how they felt when their teacher did the same thing, while Yukito begged him to let him continue fighting. He then wondered why he was unable to do anything despite his power, and when he was about to break down, he was surprised by the appearance of Jinji, who decided to use his master spell to help Yukito regain his power as a water dragon, even though it would cost him his life. He then told them what had happened since Makoto had told him the secret and how he had decided to be the one to sacrifice his life in order to summon the water dragon's power and restore balance to the island. He felt lucky that he had no family or many acquaintances, and although sacrificing his life for the island was not his way, he was indebted to the island for being the place where he had been raised him, so he decided to live his short life the way he wanted and do what he wanted. Before Yukito returned to the island, he heard Sanji and Momoko talking about him, so he told them that he would go and bring him back to the island. When he arrived in the city, he was nervous at the thought of meeting his younger colleague who would sacrifice his life for him just as his teacher had done a decade ago. He added that after meeting him, he found that he had changed a lot and had become a person who tended to isolate himself despite feeling lonely. Over time, he realized that he was an honest person, and when he saw him smile sincerely, he felt joy and pride that his death would not be in vain. When the time came, he did not hesitate to sacrifice himself because he had lived his life as he wanted despite his fear of death after seeing the volcano erupt. The next day, his friends searched everywhere for him until they went to the liquor store where he used to buy drinks. The store owner told them that he had left a short while ago after paying off all his debts. Meanwhile, Jingi was walking through the streets, lost in thought, when he happened to see Ibara on his way. When he followed her, he came across Yukito and his friends and saw Haruaki disappearing using his powers. When he found Yukito, who was surprised by the fact that he was a water dragon, he realized that Haruaki had discovered the truth on his own. He then found that Yukito was determined to go and fight the fire dragon, so he went to Makoto's grave and told him what he intended to do and that he had devoted his time and effort to practicing his secret spell without anyone noticing. He also said that he had deliberately not raised the hopes of those around him so that he would not feel regret when he died. He added that he found Yukito trusted him even though he never stopped mocking him, and even though he tried hard not to form human bonds with others, he ended up forming a strong bond with Yukito. He confessed to Makoto that he was afraid and did not want to die, but at the same time, he loved the island and loved his student. Then he got up and gathered his courage to go and carry out his last mission as a Pulse Guardian. When he stood in front of the dragon, he told Yukito that he would help him regain his power as a water dragon. When Yukito told him that he wanted to have the power to protect the island and his friends, he felt that his sacrifice would not be in vain. He then began to cast the secret spell in front of everyone, and a huge aura resembling water emanated from him. After it spread throughout the entire place, Yukito found himself standing in a space-like place with Jingi, surrounded by pulse energy from all sides. Jinji then told him that he had chosen to act as a mediator between the water dragon spirit and the pulsating energy in order to regain his powers. He expressed his confidence that the plan would succeed as he possessed the power of water, which made them compatible. When Yukito realized that he would sacrifice his life to gain power, Jinji did not give him the chance to agree or refuse. He grabbed his hand so they could jump together into the depths of the energy after telling him to protect the island. Yukito found himself diving into the depths of the sea until he reached the broken body of the water dragon. He then remembered everything as if it had happened yesterday. He found Jinji holding his hand to say goodbye before his body completely disappeared. Jinji fell dead, and Yukito regained the power of the water dragon, causing a massive flood that forced everyone around him to flee. He prepared to face the fire dragon and force him to submit after he transformed into his original form as a dragon. The fire dragon began its attack on Yukito, but he was able to easily fend it off, then grabbed it and carried it away. They continued to exchange blows against each other in the air, and the fire dragon managed to inflict some damage on him, but fortunately, he had the ability to heal himself. While the fight between the dragons continued, the others felt that there was no way for them to intervene and contented themselves with watching. Haruwaki created a protective barrier around them to shield them from the shrapnel from their attacks. Ibara wondered what would happen if Yukito couldn't defeat the dragon. Haruwaki told her that this was not a fight, but rather an attempt by the two dragons to restore the harmony between them through this conflict, and that it would not end until they were at peace with each other, as no ordinary human could perform the ritual to purify the dragons. When AK asked him if he would return to his former self after this was over, he told him that they did not know the spell their teacher had cast on him, and all they could do was wait. On the other side, Yukito tried to calm the fire dragon and apologized for leaving him alone all this time. The dragon then reconciled with him, and they managed to restore harmony between them and stop fighting each other. A huge number of metama appeared after the situation calmed down to announce the end of the battle and the return of the dragons to their normal state. After that, they were surprised to see Yukito return to his human form and found him talking to Jingi and trying to wake him up to return home. They approached him and told him that he had died when he regained his power as a water dragon. He was in shock and couldn't believe it. Meanwhile, the news reached the disaster control department, and they were relieved that the matter had ended without any loss of life, but Sanji was soon surprised to learn of the sacrifice Jingi had made to save the islands. On the other hand, Haruwaki took the depressed and sad Yukito home, and when they met Momoko on their way, he remained sitting with his head down, not saying a word, which forced Haruwaki to tell her the truth. The next day, a funeral befitting Jinji's sacrifice was held, and everyone attended to say goodbye except Yukito, who was unable to leave his room. While his friends drank his favorite sake at his funeral to say goodbye, Ibara couldn't help but think about Yukito. Meanwhile, Sanji was in Jingi's room, talking to his picture and scolding him for leaving him to take care of everything by himself, even arranging his room and preparing for the funeral. He told him that he had always been a selfish boy. Then he started crying because he would miss him and told him that this was the hardest thing he had ever had to go through. On the other hand, Haruwaki went to find Aka, who had decided to spend some time alone away from everyone. When he found him, he told him that Momoko was worried about him. Aka didn't care and asked him if he already knew that Yukito was a water dragon. He replied that he had only found out yesterday and that he hadn't shown any signs of awakening yet. It would be difficult without the charm that Jingi had given him before he died. AKA asked him where he learned it, and Haruwaki showed him the book they found in his room while cleaning and told him that it was their teacher's notebook and contained notes describing the spell that the old Pulse Guardian cast in the past to revive the water dragon. AKA felt resentful that he had chosen to take on the burden of saving the island alone and practicing the spell in secret without telling them. Haruwaki told him that they would have tried to use it instead of him if they had known about it earlier, so he deliberately kept it a secret so that he could do it himself when the time came. AKA asked him if he felt satisfied that their younger brother's sacrifice had brought peace to the island once again. He then approached him, grabbed him tightly, and accused him of caring about nothing but maintaining balance for the sake of the islands. Haruwaki pushed his hand away and told him that abandoning their teacher and running away that day was their only choice, and that he had known the truth about Yukito all along. But he didn't know how to awaken the water dragon inside him, so he tried to sacrifice his life to calm the fire dragon, but ended up failing. He then confessed that he had felt ashamed of himself the whole time, but that people like him would never understand because he had chosen the easy way out by resorting to black magic. AKA headbutted him and told him that he had resorted to black magic in order to gain the power necessary to defeat the fire dragon, even if it meant selling his soul. They ended up fighting each other until their students arrived and stopped them. AKA told him that whatever they said now would not change the fact that none of them could defeat the fire dragon alone and that they were ultimately just failures who were unable to protect those they loved, and they began to cry. On the other side, Momoko entered Yukito's room to try to comfort him. He told her that everything that happened was his fault, as Jinji would not have needed to use the spell if he had been able to transform into a water dragon on his own. Momoko hugged him and told him that it wasn't his fault, and that even though she didn't know anything about harnessing pulse energy, she knew Jinji well enough to know that he was aware that the only way to save everyone was to sacrifice his life, and that he wouldn't have done it if he had known. She began to cry, saying she couldn't believe that a troublemaker like him would sacrifice himself for the island. She asked Yukito to attend the funeral to give him a proper send-off, but he remained locked in his room. After Momoko left, he received many messages on his phone, but he chose to remain silent. Then he was surprised by the appearance of Maitama in his room and found her heading outside. When he followed her, she led him to where Jingi's body was. After entering the room, he found Sanji sitting alone, drinking, and told him that everyone had already left. He then expressed his gratitude to him for saving the island and thanked him on behalf of all the residents of Ayaka. He told him that in the end, the credit belonged to Jingi, which made Sanji feel sad that the island needed someone else to sacrifice their life to keep it safe. He began to cry, expressing his desire to live so that he could say goodbye to Jingi and Makoto with a smile, but he was unable to do so after they sacrificed their lives for him. He then decided to leave to deal with the aftermath of the dragon's attack and asked Yukito to stay with Jingi. After he ended up alone in the room with Jinji, he sat next to him and revealed his face to tell him that he now understood what he had told him before, that he intended to live his life as he wished until he died, as he knew that he would not live long in the end, and described his behavior as selfish. He then asked if he had any idea how difficult this would be for everyone, or if he thought they would be okay without him. At that moment, he couldn't control his anger and, without realizing it, he awakened his powers and blamed him. Then he found himself floating in a place filled with energy, and when he heard someone calling him, he was surprised to see Jinji standing there holding what looked like a lamppost and waving at him. Jinji asked him to help him, as he didn't know what had brought him there. He felt confused and told him that he was still not used to his powers and did not know how to transform into a water dragon. When Jinji mocked him, he decided to leave him alone, but quickly changed his mind when he saw him falling into the void. When he returned to reality, he found Sanji and Momoko standing behind him, so he told them that they might still be able to save Jinji from death, as his soul was still trapped in the pulse energy. He then left the room and asked them to contact the others and tell them what had happened. He then rushed outside to try to save Jingi, thinking that he was wrong to think that he would be better off without him, and decided to use the power that had caused him suffering throughout his life to save someone close to him. As he ran, he managed to awaken the power of the water dragon within him. Yukito began to sense where Jingi was being swept away and headed toward the fourth island, following the flow of pulse energy. He decided to jump in to save him and began searching for him around him, calling out to him, when he was surprised by a stormy wave of pulse energy rushing in the opposite direction. Then he found a red ball settling right in front of him before disappearing in a flash, and then Makoto appeared behind him and told him that this is what would have happened if he had grown up in Ayaka without him. Yukito was surprised when he realized that this was his father. After Makoto took off his mask, he asked him what he was doing there, and he told him that he was in charge of restraining the fire dragon until he succeeded in awakening his powers. But things got out of control because he couldn't defeat the fire dragon in direct combat. He added that he no longer needed to control the dragon's powers after he finally succeeded in transforming into a water dragon, and that he was afraid that the raging fire dragon would control him if he grew up near him without anyone watching over him. So he told his companions to leave him at an orphanage in the city to weaken the bond between them. Makoto then expressed his sadness that he wanted to continue living with everyone and that none of this had happened, and he mocked himself because it was not his habit to become attached to others. When Yukito asked him what he had come here to do, he told him that he was looking for Jingi, thinking that he was still clinging to that pole like a stripper, but he was surprised to find that he had already disappeared. Yukito begged him to take him to where he was because he intended to bring him back to life, so he decided to take him there. But Yukito couldn't follow him because of the big wave flowing in the opposite direction, so he warned him that if he separated from him, he might get lost in the pulse. Yukito tried to resist and rush towards him, but Makoto told him that strength would be useless as the energy would turn into Aramitama at that rate, and told him to join the spirits flowing around him, at which point the force preventing him from advancing would disappear, as this is what is called harnessing the pulse. Yukito used his power and succeeded in removing the obstacles and reaching his father, while Makoto felt it was wonderful to talk to his son and teach him some things. On the other side, Haruaki was praying near the lake before Aramitama appeared behind him. His disciples decided to take care of him so that he wouldn't disturb their teacher, but AKA quickly appeared and killed him with a single bullet. When he joined Haruaki, Ibara went to Chataru and Yako to ask them what was going on, and they told her that it had something to do with Yukito's transformation into a dragon. Ibara was surprised that he used his power again and jumped into the pulse energy to save Jinji and bring him back to life. They hoped that things would go well inside, But Ake told them that the place he jumped into was a river of all life in this world and that he would not be able to withstand its intensity. Then they found themselves surrounded by many Ararimata, and Haruwaki realized that they kept appearing because of his prayers, while Ake decided to take care of them to buy time for him. On the other side, Yukito reached Jinji and found him fighting with all his might not to drown in the depths of the pulse energy. He carried him, and at that moment, he could have believed that he had come to save him himself. He felt that his efforts to stay alive as long as possible had been worth it. Yukito felt angry that he was still acting selfishly after angering everyone with his decision to die alone. Jingi wondered if there was anything else he could have done, and then Makoto intervened and told him that there was a lot he could have done and scolded him for using the secret spell while he still lacked experience. He told him that he had to use it when things got bad and that the island would have turned into a sea of fire if he hadn't. Makoto told him that he should have let that happen, as the destruction of the island was part of nature if Yukito failed to awaken his own power. Yukito told him that they all wanted to protect their homeland at that moment and couldn't just stand by and do nothing. When Jingi asked him why he had come here, he told him that he wanted to bring him back to life by drawing on the pulse energy. Jingi asked if such a thing was possible, and Makoto told him to trust the instincts of the gods, as the pulse energy had not absorbed him because he did not want to leave in the first place. Jingi admitted that he still wanted to eat delicious food, drink his favorite sake, and do everything he used to do, and confessed that he was still attached to life. When he asked him to hurry up and take him home, Yukito felt confused because he had lost his way and didn't know how to get back to the island. Jingi felt frustrated that they would end up lost inside the energy. Makoto told them that he could sense the island after Yukito broke his seal to jump into the pulse energy. While they were talking, Yukito found a way out and quickly pulled Jingi by the hand. Jingi remembered when he pulled him behind him to hurry to the port to escape. Suddenly, an amulet appeared in Yukito's hand as he tried to reach the source of the light. He found Haruwaki and the others communicating with them through it and realized that they were trying to pull them to the exit. Then Makoto approached them and said goodbye before pushing them towards the exit. Jingi wanted to accompany them to the exit, but he told them that he had been here for a long time and could not return, as he was tasked with watching the fire dragon. Then he disappeared. They had no choice but to move forward and return to their companions. On their way, Yukito felt a connection with Haruwaki even though there was no sign that they were on the right path. Suddenly, Ake's supernatural hand appeared in front of him after breaking the barrier between the two worlds to pull them out. Ake tried to pull them out with all his strength, and then Yukito was surprised by the appearance of a small red ball in front of him, asking him if he intended to leave again. He realized that it was the fire dragon and promised him that he would not leave and would live on the island to fulfill his duty as the Pulse Guardian and Water Dragon. After that, he regained consciousness in the real world and found everyone sitting near him, scolding him for his reckless behavior. When he looked at his hand, he wondered where Jingi had gone, so Haruwaki gave him one of his amulets to check on him. On the other side, Jingi woke up from death like an undertaker in front of Momoko, who was stunned by what she saw. The first thing he asked her after his return was for a drink. When Sanji entered and found him sitting in front of him, he wet his pants out of fear and thought that what happened was Makoto's mistake. Yukito felt relieved that his plan had succeeded and that Jingi had come back to life, while Aka realized that even losers like him and Haruwaki could win if they worked together. The next morning, everyone came after hearing the news, and Jingi's friends couldn't control themselves when they saw him alive. They started crying and decided to celebrate his return right away. Jingi felt happy when he saw how much everyone loved him and that he wasn't just a useless troublemaker to them. As time passed, everyone returned to their routine activities after the situation on the island stabilized, and everyone lived in peace thanks to Yukito's strength and his father's sacrifice. After a few days, Yukito prepared to start high school and felt embarrassed to wear a uniform for the first time. He went to school and found his friends waiting for him. His embarrassment quickly faded when he was with them, and they decided to start their new journey as high school students.